Present.
Director Leonard.
Present.
Director O'Halloran has asked to be excused tonight. Director Peterson.
Present.
Director Simpson.
Present.
Director Taylor.
In attendance.
And Chair Gokul Gandhi. We have 8 present.
I will now ask the Secretary to lead us in the recitation of the Pledge of Allegiance. Members, please mute your devices.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Before we begin tonight's meeting, we have a short announcement regarding interpretation services for the Spanish-speaking members of our audience.
Buenas tardes. Esta junta escolar se transmitirá en español para aquellas personas que lo necesiten. Para escuchar esta junta en español, por favor marque el número 312-626-6799. Repito, por favor marque el siguiente número, 312-626-6799 y ponga el número de identificación o código que es 608-130-5362. Repito, ponga el número de identificación o código para esta junta que es el 608-130-5362. Gracias. Thank you.
Pursuant to Board Rule 1.06, this meeting is being conducted virtually. Board members may be participating in person from the Central Services Building. In order to allow as much public access and participation as possible, this meeting is being broadcast via live stream on the MPS website and on the MPS YouTube stream, the links to which may be found on the MPS website on the broadcast page. We will now move into our items of business. As stated in the public notice, individuals who wish to speak were required to register in advance. I ask those waiting to speak to please remain on the platform until you are called upon. Although we are on a virtual platform, we will still follow Robert's Rules of Orders, which dictates that all comments should be directed to the chair. Also, any questions or requests, including those from board members or the administration, are to be directed toward the chair, who will determine the most efficient way to address them. As always, written testimony will be accepted for transmittal to the board. Written comments may be submitted to the board via the Office of Board Governance, P.O. Box 2181, Milwaukee, Wisconsin 53201, or fax to 414-475-8071, or email it to governance@milwaukee.k12.wi.us. Finally, for our listening audience, if you wish to access this evening's agenda items and attachments online, you may do so by visiting the meetings, agendas, and minutes page of the MPS website. Now let's begin. Madam Secretary, item 1.
Item number 1 is an informational overview and public hearing on the 2022-23 Superintendent's proposed budget. This is an informational item. And the board will give public hearing on this item. However, no action will be taken.
Would the administration please present the item?
Yes, good evening, Chair Gokul Gandhi and members of the Strategic Planning and Budget Committee. Keith Posley, Superintendent of Schools. I'm pleased to present to you the Milwaukee Public Schools proposed budget for the 2022-23 school year. While this is a standard annual event, the last couple of years have not been usual for anyone. We are living during unique times that impact the school district as a whole, our schools, our students, our staff, and our families. The pandemic has taught us what a great resource our public schools are to the community. To that end, we are proud of our hardworking staff that has done what it takes to navigate these unprecedented times. A time when it is important to support our students and staff. The $1.3 billion budget prioritizes students and staff. This is evident through 94% of our schools' operation funds allocated to support schools and provide the resources needed to educate students from 3-year-old kindergarten through 12th grade. The budget, thanks to the referendum, provides for a well-rounded education through increasing music, art, and physical education. We value our staff to help salaries keep up with rising costs. Proposed is a 4.7% cost of living increase for all staff. 5 priorities for success. The budget we are preparing tonight is aligned to the 5 priorities for success, prioritizing fiscal resources in schools and focusing on the 5 priorities reflects the district's unwavering commitment to maximize the learning of all students. The budget is prudent and responsible. We are using this opportunity tonight to ensure transparency, communication, and collaboration. At this time, I'll turn you over to Martha Kreisman.
Greetings, Chair Gokungandi and members of the committee. My name is Martha Kreitzman, Chief Financial Officer. The topics to be discussed tonight include selected district highlights from the current year, the budget development process, and an overview of the district's funding and long-range opportunities. Long-term opportunities become even more important to discuss as we wrestle with the effects of the pandemic and a state funding formula that does not keep up with costs. For example, in 2010-11, the revenue limit that caps our funding for our school operations had a per pupil amount of $10,013. Fast forward to 2018-19, and it was $10,122. Only $109 increase. That isn't even a $14 increase per year. Under Governor Evers, initially there was an increase of about $175 each year the first 2 years. Last year and the current year, there were no increases, and without the referendum approved by the voters of Milwaukee, the per pupil would have been $10,476, the same as fiscal year 21. Thanks to the referendum, the per pupil was $11,244 in fiscal year 22 and is expected to be $11,522 for fiscal year 23. These are still early estimates. The referendum in fiscal year 21 did not even bring the total revenue up to the amount of funding received under the revenue limit in 2010-11. You can see that revenue is not keeping up with inflation. Besides the state's lack of inflationary increases that were intended to be part of the revenue limit formula, the other reason that revenue is not keeping up is directly related to enrollment. Enrollment has been decreasing over many years. School enrollment in Wisconsin and other parts of the country have been on the decline since the late 90s. It is important that MPS maintains and grows the student enrollment. One note before I talk about highlights of this budget. ESSER 2 and 3 funds are considered part of fiscal year 22 budget and are therefore not reflected in this budget. We have brought forth an ESSER supplement to keep you updated on ESSER work, spending, and modifications requested. Since ESSER is not included, it may look like we are losing much funding and staffing that we are not losing, but is still included in ESSER. Equity in funding our schools is important. A cross-departmental team of staff scrutinizes school budgets and reports out any additional support needed. Highlights of this budget include maintaining funding and positions for classrooms enable us to drive ambitious instruction, accelerated learning. The school accounts were increased by $26 million in order to keep schools whole while providing a 4.7% cost of living increase and increased funding for art, music, and physical education, including 26 additional FTEs. MPS has made the health and well-being of students a priority, and this budget maintains that priority. The ESSER funds provide additional mental health supports. While the funding for school operations is predicted to decrease by 9 million, we are still able to fund the referendum projects by an increase of $7 million to keep consistent to our commitment to voters. The district remains committed to the Milwaukee Board of School Directors goals focused on academic achievement, student, family, and community engagement, effective and efficient operations. Before we go forward into the proposed budget, we want to first acknowledge the past year's accomplishments. Dr. Posley will provide us with MPS highlights of the current year that will help frame our discussion going into the next year.
Thank you, Martha. In Milwaukee Public Schools, we have the privilege of serving over 69,000 students that are racially, culturally, and linguistically and economically diverse. Students have a choice of among 156 public schools that include 21 bilingual schools, 4 language immersion, 8 IB schools, and 8 Montessori schools. We are home of 5 of the state top high schools, according to the U.S. News and World Report. Milwaukee Public Schools prepare students for higher education. The class of 2021 received over $96 million in scholarship, helping pave the way for their post-secondary success. And the goal number 1, we are proud for the many ways that the Milwaukee MPS staff provide support for students, for student achievement throughout this year. You will see a few examples on the slides, and I will provide some highlights. Ambitious instruction, accelerated learning was implemented at the start of the 2021-22 school year. The plan for and professional development are focused on formative practice, explicit instruction, and engagement. 150 professional development sessions have been offered in reading, science, math, writing, planning for biliteracy, and advanced studies. This includes professional development for the literacy and math textbook adoptions that took place. In preparing students for post-secondary success, a personal finance curriculum was developed for high school students. Dual enrollment opportunities have expanded from 6 college courses to 17. We have expanded the reach of dual enrollment to include students in alternative programs, and there will be additional college courses offered this summer as well. We offered 4 virtual MQ Milwaukee Parent Institutes to help parents learn how to assist their students in navigating through high school, collaborating with teachers, support emotional and social development, created a supportive home learning environment, and assist them with college preparation and exploration. Over the past 3 years, students have earned over 3,100 college credits through the MQ Early College Program. Under goal number 2, to ensure students, family, and community, Milwaukee Public Schools held over 20 sessions to discuss funding priorities. The discussions and surveys were used to develop the ESSER plan. To keep families informed and involved, the district published a Family Friday newsletter each week that is sent directly to their emails and published on the website. Washington High School hosted the first annual Ralph Davis Basketball Invitational. The tournament, named after the late Ralph Davis for his powerful impact on both Washington school community and Special Olympics teams, was the first of its kind to have special education students and general education students playing side by side. We fill the stands with over 150 students, staff, and families. We plan to make this an annual event. More than 200 high school students participated in the Building Trade Career Fair held by Milwaukee Public Schools. The event highlighted the industry professionals, the talent in MPS through the Department of Facilities and Maintenance, Youth, and Registered Apprentice Program. And then if we take a look at highlights from goal number 3, much work has been done to create and maintain effective and efficient operations, as evidenced through several recognitions the district has received, Milwaukee Public Schools received a budget award from the Association of School Business Officials International, MPS, that's been recognized by the Governance Council for Financial Literacy for adopting graduation requirements for personal finance. The Milwaukee Recreation earned accreditation through the Commission and for accreditation of Parks and Recreation Agency and the National Recreation and Park Association. Other work the district has accomplished, including creating 5 outdoor classrooms and increased district-wide bandwidth for better video screening and virtual resources. I'd like to acknowledge the district and school teams that contributed to the accomplishments of these efforts. Although that was a short list of the many, many initiatives and projects that were launched and implemented in the 2021-22 school year, we look forward to continuing with the same commitment in the 2022-23 school year under the proposed budget before you this evening. With that, Lynn Rule will share the intended purpose. Lynn?
Thank you, Dr. Posley. Director Coco Gandhi, members of the committee, I'm Lynn Rule, Director of Financial Planning and Budget Services. Budgets are intended to present the district's financial plan, communicate to stakeholders, guide management staff to aid the control of financial resources, provide highlights of financial policies, and determine how the additional $7 million in referendum revenue will be utilized. This slide shows the timetable continuing through the transmittal of the budget to the Milwaukee Common Council of an adopted budget in June. Review of school budgets and the development of and review of office budgets were completed in February. The superintendent's proposed budget was released on April 29th, and in May, the board, with input from various stakeholders, will review, possibly amend, and approve a balanced budget. Select schools presented to the superintendent and his senior staff the activities implemented towards student achievement and how they plan to move forward in the coming year. Schools, as they are creating budgets, work with their school engagement council and staff to create the best budget possible for their school. This budget is then presented in the regional resolution budget debrief, which includes representation from budget, human resources, school administration, and academics to ensure budgets will help schools follow their school improvement plan. Office budgets are also presented to the superintendent for final review. Budget parameters were approved by the Milwaukee Board of School Directors on January 27th, 2022. To better communicate the goals for the budget, the parameters for FY23 are: MPS is committed to developing a budget that will guide the district to increase access to high-quality educational opportunities and positive, supportive school environments that result in better academic outcomes for students. Allocate equitable educational resources and well-prepared staff to improve students' access to productive instruction. This is being done partially with the textbook adoption. Prioritize school budgets by adjusting and repurposing educational programming and departmental budgets. School budgets were increased by $34.2 million. Allocate resources in the areas of school library, art, music, and physical education. These positions increased by 22.43 FTEs since FY20. Create a positive school environment that provides a sense of belonging, is culturally responsive, and provides access to social, emotional learning and mental health support. This is being supported with ESSER funds. Implement strategies to recruit and retain staff, including a compensation study. Vendors are being reviewed now for that process. Implement salary schedules with a possible cost of living increase. 4.7% increase has already been approved by the board and is included in the budget. Consider employee benefit modifications, for eligible employees to identify costs of savings and increase efficiencies. No changes are being made at this time. Explore operating efficiencies, including those related to transportation. Increase the number of site-based production kitchens. This is already happening this year as staff are being hired and will continue in FY23. Implement a kitchen equipment replacement schedule based on an inventory aging report. Provide flexibility to meet standards to safeguard health, safety, and educational needs during the COVID-19 pandemic. Address deferred maintenance and future construction needs by restoring revenue to the construction fund and the construction trust. The district wasn't able to do this due to reduced revenue, but did add to the construction trust in FY21 to help offset this. Prepare a balanced budget that is based on state law and maximizes the revenue limit. Maximizing the revenue limit is important as it affects the current year and is used in the calculation of the following year's revenue limit. Now, public hearings are used to present the balanced proposed budget, review and discuss the proposed budget, possibly amend the proposed budget, and approve a balanced budget. Brian Terrell will now speak about the district's revenues and give individual fund information. Thank you.
Director Gokagandhi, members of the board, I am Brian Terrell, Manager of Financial Planning and Budget Services. Milwaukee Public Schools has a number of funds. Our statutory funds include the School Operations Fund, the Extension Fund, and the Construction Fund. The district also has fiduciary funds or trusts held by MPS. The last type of fund is the non-statutory fund, which includes categorical funds or grants. The total projected revenue for MPS in fiscal year 22-23 is $1.3 billion. This is a decrease of $746.5 million as compared to current year. This decrease is due to a reduction in categorical funds as a result of recognizing the ESSER funds in the current year. However, the funds will be available to be expended through September 2024. We have decreased FTEs or full-time equivalent positions by 81.46 FTEs overall, which is a 0.8% decrease. However, 110 FTE positions have been maintained in ESSER but show in FY22 budgets. The net is an increase of 28.54 FTE positions, an increase of 0.3%. There is also a decrease of 7 teacher positions, a decrease of 0.1%. However, 44 FTE positions have been maintained in ESSER but show in FY22 budgets. This is a net increase of 37 FTE positions, 0.7% increase. This slide shows a graphic representation of the district's projected revenue. As you can see, the majority comes from school operations. This slide shows that the majority of our funds are spent on the salaries and benefits of our staff. The majority of MPS school operation fund revenues come from property taxes, equalization, and integration aids, a total amount of 84.2%. We have other state aids, such as our handicap aid, bilingual aid, and library aids that make up an additional 11.2%. Federal aids, such as our Medicaid reimbursements and our indirect cost recovery aids, cover just 2.4%, and other local funds account for 2.2%. The scale before you represents the full revenue limit. Tax levy amounts and state aid is how we get to the full revenue limit. As a result, if state aid is increased, the tax levy amount will be decreased and vice versa. Our revenue limit was $10,122 per pupil from FY16 through FY18. In FY21, the revenue limit was $10,476. The revenue limit for FY22 is $11,243. This change shows how important the referendum has been to the fiscal health of the district. We do not currently know what the revenue limit will be in FY23, but DPI has projected that it will be $11,521. As the slide shows, the increase in the per pupil amount over the past 3 years is due to the referendum funding that the district has received since fiscal year 21. In fiscal year 23, NPS will have 156 schools and is projected to have 67,500 students. These before you are the final revenue limits from fiscal year 12 to fiscal year 21. And the FY21 amount goes up due to the referendum, and the FY22 and FY23 amounts follow suit. The operations fund is estimated to decrease by $9.1 million. This decrease is a combination of a lower tax levy and a slight increase in handicap aids. As we have spoken about already, the majority of the school operation fund revenue comes from property taxes, property tax levy, equalization, and integration aids. The exact breakdown of these amounts will not be known until October 2022. All budgets presented to the board and finally approved by the board must be balanced. The expenditures and the operations fund balance are equal to the revenues. Over 67% of the expenditure budget is for salaries, other wages, and benefits. The other large portion of the expenditure budget is for purchase services. A significant amount of purchase services are used for contracted schools, transportation, open enrollment costs, utilities, and technical licenses. Many of these provide services directly to students and enhance enrollment. The percent of school operations fund going to schools and school accounts has increased over the last 5 years from 88 to 94%. The total operations funds went down by $9.1 million. The table before you reflects the reorganization that was approved by the school board in February 2022. As part of the spring election on April 7th, 2020, the community overwhelmingly voted in support of the referendum. The referendum authorizes the district to exceed the revenue limit by $84 million in fiscal year 23. Referendum budgets and position detail is also discussed more in depth in our referendum addendum to the budget book. The School Nutrition Services is a fund within the School Operations Fund that accounts for the breakfast, lunch, and other meal programs supported primarily through the National School Lunch Program. The School Nutrition Services Fund is expected to generate sufficient revenue to cover costs. The majority of revenues for this fund is from the Federal School Meal Program. The majority of the Nutrition Service Fund expenditures are then spent on staff, food, and supplies for the program. The Construction Fund is used to account for and report financial resources that are restricted, committed, or assigned to expenditures for the acquisition or construction of capital facilities. It is also used to fund the additions to and/or remodeling of existing buildings. The majority of the construction fund expenditures are spent on purchase services, which include contracts to add additions or remodel our current buildings. The extension fund is used to record financial transactions related to the recreational activities and is jointly managed by the Office of Operations, the Office of Academics, the Office of Communications and School Performance. Most of the revenues for the extension fund, which includes our recreation department, are from the property tax levy. The local revenues represent the fees collected for recreational programs, and the increased funding will support increased costs as a result of the growing inflation rate. The majority of extension fund purchases are for staff and purchase services. The purchase services are for contracts for the community learning centers and Safe Places program that provide direct services to children. Categorically aided programs or grants have been reduced in FY23. The majority of this change is due to MPS recognizing the ESSER received funding in fiscal year 22. However, these funds will be available to be expended through September 2024. I will now turn the presentation over to Shelly Perkins, who will speak more on ESSER funding.
Chair Gogo Gandhi, members of the committee, my name is Shelly Perkins, ESEA Compliance Manager. I am excited to have the opportunity to provide you with updates on our activities related to ESSER 2 and 3. The purpose of this presentation is to share the current program progress, expenditures and commitments, and remaining balances of ESSER 2 and 3 budgets approved by the Milwaukee Board of School Directors on May 27, 2021 for ESSER 2 and October 14, 2021 for ESSER 3, and outlined in the spring 2022 proposed budget revision detail, which is attachment 6. The reporting period is from inception through February 28, 2022. The format of the spring 2022 proposed budget revision detail is a combination of both ESSER 2 and 3 budget summary book for a streamlined and hopefully easier review of the ESSER 2 and 3 allocations under each funding priority. Those priorities were accelerating learning, health and wellness, facilities, technology, and extracurricular engagement. This book is formatted by each committee detailing the accomplishments through February 28, 2022, future planning, and the proposed budget revisions. There were some budget adjustments within the budget to better reflect implementation needs. The green highlighted budget line items are new activities or program requests for approval. The new budget line items were determined by need and supported by unspent funds from previously approved line items. With the proposed revisions, the required 20% of ESSER 3 funds will remain allocated to support mitigating learning loss. Under the ESSER 3 revised budget column, the gold highlighted numbers show which items reflect mitigating learning loss. This chart shows the spring 2022 ESSER 2 budget detail. As a reminder, $225 million was allocated to Milwaukee Public Schools under ESSER 2. You will notice that in the spring adjusted column, the grand total of ESSER 2 changed slightly. This is due to the Wisconsin Department of Public Instruction adjusting the state's ESSER 2 and 3 ESSER allocation to provide new independent charter schools an ESSER 2 and 3 allocation. Looking at the chart, approximately $96 million of the ESSER 2 allocation has been spent or committed as of February 28, 2022. $5 million has been spent under the accelerating learning priority. However, $11.2 million has been spent for the science textbook adoption currently under a board account and will be moved to ESSER, so it is not reflected in this report. Pages 4 and 5 of the ESSER 2 and 3 proposed budget revision detail lists over 30 accomplishments under accelerating learning as of February 28, 2022. A little over $3 million was spent under the health and wellness priority on various activities such as expanding mental health and social emotional learning support. More information regarding health and wellness accomplishments and future planning can be found on page 24 of the booklet. The majority of the funding, which was approximately $86 million, is under contract within the facilities priority on improving air quality in our schools, installing water bottle filling stations, and construction of outdoor classrooms, to name a few. Additional accomplishments and future planning for facilities is listed on page 47 of the attachment 6. Approximately $129 million remain in ESSER 2. Next slide. As a reminder, 2 additional priority areas, technology and extracurricular engagement, were added when developing the ESSER 3 plan. Approximately $33 million was spent under the technology priority area. The majority of that funding was used to purchase technology equipment to support student learning. The ESSER 3 budget was approved by the board on October 14, 2021. So many of the activities are in the planning phase. For example, extracurricular engagement was not funded through ESSER 2. And given that much of FY22 has been a planning year to begin the majority of the implementation in FY23. Page 62 lays out the planning completed thus far. Approximately $455 million remain in ESSER 3. Next slide. The online version of the spring 2022 ESSER 2 and 3 proposed budget revision detail is posted on the district's ESSER website at the link listed there. You can also go to the MPS website and type in ESSER in the search engine to get you there as well. For more information about the budget revision detail, please contact the MPS Office of Finance at the number listed there, or you can also email us at that ESSER email listed. Thank you again for this opportunity.
Chair Gandhi, members of the board, I am Brian Terrell, Manager of Financial Planning and Budget Services. As can be seen on the last column of the chart, revenues are projected to increase by $27.1 million, while expenditures are expected to increase by $190.2 million between fiscal year 2022-2023 and fiscal year 2026-2027. As a result, MPS must find additional funding or reduce expenditures moving forward. Next slide. The referendum will help MPS, and so will additional ESSER funds that will be available for the next few years. In FY23, the referendum funding has increased to $84 million of the $87 million that will be available in total. These funds have gone towards student services within schools and staff supports. COVID-19 will still have an overall impact going forward. Inflation increases, for example, CPI, will drive up our staffing costs. Vendors are still experiencing supply chain issues, and as a district, we are having issues filling positions. However, the district continues to search for operating efficiencies to offer as much funding as possible to our schools and students. I will now turn it over to Director Posey.
I would like to acknowledge and thank all of the district staff and stakeholders for their contributions, along with the Milwaukee Board of School Directors for their support throughout this process. Prioritizing fiscal resources in schools reflects the district's unwavering commitment to provide the best possible education for students. The annual budget process affords an opportunity for collaboration and public input. We look forward to feedback and discussions on the proposed budget from the board and the community as we work together to improve opportunities for our students in the Milwaukee Public Schools. Thank you. That completes our presentation. We are prepared to answer any questions that you may have at this time.
Madam Secretary, are there any people on the platform for public comments, and would my colleagues be okay with us taking the public comments before we ask questions?
Madam Chair, members of the committee, yes, we do have 5 individuals on the platform registered to speak on this item. Would you like to go to public testimony?
Yes, please.
Thank you. The first speaker that we have on the platform to speak on this item is Michelle Hilbert. Please state your name, spell your last name, and begin your testimony.
Could you please repeat the directions?
Please state your name, spell your last name, and begin your testimony.
Hi, my name is Michelle Hilbert, Hilbert, and
Thank you.
I'm here as a member of Are We Milwaukee. Thank you for this opportunity to testify. Budgets are moral documents, and I hear really good intentions, especially around the health of students, particularly mental health in these trying times, which certainly leads to better academic success. But I have some questions about some themes throughout the document. One being of culture and climate, which is often tied to improving outcomes for Black and Brown students. The quote is that MPS Climate Improvement Plan creates a framework to ensure that school leaders are supported in efforts to build capacity of staff members, utilize alternatives to suspension, create school environments that allow for high quality teaching and learning, and improve school climate. So my questions are, where is the climate improvement plan and who has seen it? And wondering what framework is being used to support transformation of school culture and assess that. On the topics of courageous conversations about race, it's listed one time throughout the document. There's no line item linked to this work and no budget positions linked to the work as far as I could see. Is that intentional or an oversight, or maybe folded in with something else? And then the positions designed to promote change. There are 5 district-wide PBIS coaches, 13 district-wide trauma coaches, 5 district-wide positions for BLM access, equity access. How is the work of these coaches being aligned and supported to the stated goals? And what framework is being used to support the transformation of school cultures? And who's coordinating this work, and what evidence do we have of that? Disproportionality has also been a huge part of conversations, especially around PACE committee and the Office of Civil Rights resolution. It's found once throughout the document, as far as we could tell. We're not seeing any system level of
20
goals.
seconds.
No system level of goals or successes for the district. So some of the questions are that the data continues to show discriminatory practices for Black and Brown students 3 years after that resolution came through. So where's the evidence of urgency and continued need to remake MPS schools so all students?
Thank you. The next speaker on the platform is Deborah Keither. Please state your name, spell your last name, and begin your testimony.
Deborah Keither, Kuether.
Thank you.
I'm here to speak because there are 67,000 MPS students this board claims to place at the forefront of budget decision making. Our MPS students, their families, and Wisconsin taxpayers have been intentionally removed from this administration and board's financial business. Instead, this board and administration presents a facade of PowerPoints filled with graphs and charts, which, when analyzed, are such a convoluted representation of budget
Madam
transactions that they are inexplicable to anyone outside auditor. Last year, this board and administration had over a $2 billion budget. What do Milwaukee students have to show you? I'll give you a couple of examples. For 9th and 10th graders, there was a 2.5 proficiency rate in language arts and 1.4 for math. For 3rd through 8th graders, it was 7.3 in literacy
Madam
and
Chair,
4.2.
this
Despite
item
making
before
up
you is about
5% of
the
Milwaukee Public Schools
2022-23
student
budget.
body, Black student.
I'm sorry, I'm not certain that you could hear me, Madam Chair.
Yes.
This item is about the 22-23 budget, and I believe that the speaker is referencing last year and proficiency and items that are off topic. I am coming to you with to determine how you would like to proceed. Are we moving on to the next speaker or allowing the speaker to continue?
Madam Secretary, let's move to the next speaker.
So noted. The next speaker on the platform is Helen Harris. Please state your name, spell your last name, and begin your testimony.
Helen Harris, Harris, and
Thank
thank you for the opportunity to speak briefly at this meeting, and thank you all for all the work you are doing. I supported the district's closure to keep our students and families safe, but we know that that came at a price because so many students lost so much in their learning. I read an article in the New York Times today that said, especially, and we know this, our Black and Latino students fell so much further behind. And they stated that this will be the largest increase in educational inequity in a generation. But there was some good news. And the good news was that they documented some strategies to address the decline in reading and math. And that's what they called high dosage tutoring. And so I'm just going to urge the board to devote as much money or spend as much money or allocate as much more as you can to support reading tutoring that's going to be effective, that's going to be rigorous, and hold the people who provide it accountable for not just making meager gains with our children, but by making significant gains. Because our kids need it, parents are asking for it, and this is one thing that will help our kids to get them out of this quagmire that we're in right now. My second concern is our older buildings and the service repair and remodeling needed to make them safe and healthy learning spaces. Someone I know was trapped on an elevator in one of our schools today for over 30 minutes. Fortunately, it wasn't a child or someone claustrophobic, but when we have repeated problems with equipment, heating, doors that stick, issues that could cause harm or let harm into our buildings, there must be an immediate plan to address them. And I know that money is tight. I, like other Milwaukeeans, voted for the referendum to increase taxes to provide more resources for our children. So put as much as you can to fix these old buildings and provide safe learning spaces for our children. Thank you all so much for what you do.
Thank you. The next speaker on the platform is Beverly Hamilton Williams. Please state your name, spell your last name, and begin your testimony.
Okay, before I begin my testimony, I want to say this. Now, we're talking about the budget you have this year.
Madam Chair, if the speaker could state their name and spell their last name to begin the testimony.
My name is Beverly. No. You, as far as the 2 minutes and 15 seconds, I don't want you to start that yet. I'm going to give you my name and I'm going to give you my last name.
Yes, ma'am.
Beverly Williams, Williams. But what I want to say to you is, we're referring back to the other budget. My concerns are with the referendum funding of over $14 million proposed for library, art, music, and PE teachers. It is also my understanding that a group of PE teachers and other parents of color are involved in an illegal fraudulent teacher licensing program not addressed by this board. But with this over $14 million budgeted in this proposal, in last year's budget adopted, you had $12 million, only $5 million was used, with over $7 million unused. What happened to those funds? Where is the over 14 million coming for this budget. It seems that funds are unaccounted for, wasted, or spent elsewhere without transparency to taxpayers. There was over 14 million left over for attracting and retaining staff. Now you're going to have 39 million to retain staff. MPS has only 12.3% of 11th graders proficient in reading, okay? Black teachers in MPS are 16% with 50% Black students. A Johns Hopkins University study found that Black students succeed and pursue college at a higher percent when they're exposed to more Black teachers. How are you recruiting these Black teachers? With the discriminatory culture in MPS, it doesn't seem that you all are doing a very good job. Where are these disappearing funds? Are they being carried over to the following year? Okay, or are they being used for more intensive recruiting efforts at HBCUs with bonuses to improve?
Madam Secretary, is this germane to the
Such as the high MPS dropout rate, the increase?
Madam Chair, the item
based on
before
this
you is the
absence-
2022-23 budget. The current proposed budget is the item that's on the agenda.
Would you advise that we move on to the next speaker?
If that is the desire, we can move on. Yes.
Yes, let's move on to the next speaker.
Thank you. The next speaker on the platform is Angela Lucas Foley. Please state your name, spell your last name, and begin your testimony.
Angela Lucas Foley, Lucas, space, F as in Frank, Oley.
Thank you.
Good evening, Superintendent Posley, Chair Golka Gandhi, and directors. I come to you this evening as both a white educator in MPS and a parent of 2 students in MPS. According to page 25 of the executive summary, student enrollment has decreased by 10% in 5 years. Discipline discrimination persists, teacher burnout persists, schools that have versus schools that have not persists. How do we
Madam
create a
Chair,
district where every single
we
student of
are
the 73
speaking about the 2022-23 proposed budget. And if the concern is the programming in the budget, we can address that, but we need to keep to the conversation that we've been publicly noticed to speak about.
Yes, can we just remind our listening audience of that one more time, Madam Secretary, and unmute the mic, and if the speakers have commentary on the budget, then we can continue. Otherwise, let's move to the next speaker.
Thank you.
Upon examining the proposed budget, I was struck by the funds placed in the same old spots. In spite of calls for, quote, supporting culture and climate, quote, throughout the district, only 23 positions were listed for coaching supports to schools via PBIS coaches, BLMA positions, and trauma support coaches. Professional development in this important area at the school level was listed with a combined total of $109,000. This equals approximately $17 per educator for the upcoming school year. My concern as an educator and a parent of white, how can we recreate our system of education if we continue to fund in the same way? How are funds and time allotted for school teams to discuss, build, and maintain culturally responsive schools actually set up? This budget is maintaining the status quo, a status quo that is content with hemorrhaging enrollment and blaming students and families for the faults that we, as district ambassadors, are charged with doing and being better. What would a radically changed budget look like? It would look like racial equity being mentioned more than one time in a 900-page document. It would look like courageous conversations about race being mentioned more than one time in a 900-page document. And it would look like Pacific Education Group being mentioned at all with dollars attached. In this proposed budget, these important measures are funding of.
Thank you. Madam Chair, that completes the registered speakers and the opportunity to participate and give public testimony relative to this item.
Thank you, Dr. Mann. Let's continue with member commentary. If we can start with 2 questions per board director, that way we can get to everybody, and then we can circle back if my colleagues are okay with that procedure. Great.
Yes.
Great. Let's have committee members ask questions, Madam Secretary.
I do see Director Leonard's hand raised.
Should we proceed in alphabetical order to start with?
Sure.
Okay. Then your first speaker would be Director Carr.
Sure, let's do that.
No comments, no questions.
Director Garcia.
Yes, so I just wanted to get clarification on the expected revenue limit. I think we had two different amounts listed. So for fiscal year 2023, I wrote down in one document, we had 11,522. And I think that in one of the presentations that I believe Mr. Terrell gave, it was 11,521. I know it's only $1, but I just want to make sure that we have the correct item listed.
Chair Gandhi, members of the board, the revenue limit for FY23 will be $11,523.
23.
Any follow-up, Director Garcia?
Nope, not right now. Thank you so much.
Do you have another question you'd like to ask?
Nope, not right now.
And the next speaker would be Director Herndon.
I have nothing at this time.
The next speaker would be Director Leonard.
I guess the first one, and I really don't have I should have really done it. Oh, never mind. I was looking at our FT positions, and this sort of relates to what actually Ms. Hilbert was saying, and partially. I'm seeing those positions have gone down. Is that because we were not able to fill them? Or is that because somehow we're going to get rid of those positions? Or I just need an explanation on why those FTEs are going down, because they were both in the ESSER funds, but they're again showing a drop in those numbers. And I don't have the numbers with me. I apologize for that. But that's one question.
Administration.
Chair Gandhi, members of the board, first I would like to correct my answer to Director Garcia's question. The actual revenue limit for FY23 is $11,521.54. To answer Director Leonard's question about the ESSER positions, we decided to keep the positions in FY22. There are 110 positions total in ESSER funding. If those positions were included with FY23 account codes, you would see an increase of 110 positions over what is currently displayed in the budget.
So we are expecting to fill those with this next budget. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Director Leonard, do you have a second question you'd like to ask?
Not right now. Thank you.
Great.
The next speaker, the next board member would be Director Peterson.
Thank you. I understand that sometimes, given that we're talking about the ESSER 2, ESSER 3 in this budget, it can be confusing. One question I have is, given the current budget and monies that we might have allocated for ESSER 2 and 3, how many restorative practice coaches are we expecting to have working with the district this coming year, assuming we can hire how many we have allocated for?
Administration.
Chair Gandhi, members of the board, I am Brian Terrell, Financial Planning and Budget Manager. We are adding 2 additional positions in the FY23 budget, which will bring our total of restorative practices personnel to 14 FTEs.
Director Peterson, any follow-up?
Yeah, well, first of all, just thank you for that. I'm glad to hear that. And then there was also a discussion of one of the members of the audience brought up the question of tutoring And I was hopeful that the administration could describe the kind of tutoring that we anticipate getting. I assume some of it's from ESSER funds. It might not be from this budget, but I think it'd be good for the listening audience to understand what we have approved.
Administration.
Chair Gandhi, Director Peterson, members of the committee, John Hill, Director of College and Career Readiness. In ESSER, we have $10 million set aside for tutoring. 1 million is earmarked for peer-to-peer tutoring. The other 9 million we have set aside for multiple types of tutoring. One would be school-based, outside of the school day, or what we would call extended school day, before, after, and on Saturdays. The other types of tutoring, we currently have an RFP, request for proposal, that we are undergoing review, and that asks for 5 different types of tutoring: one-to-one or small group, for in-person reading tutoring during the school day, one-to-one for students in grades kindergarten through 3rd, one-to-one or small group in-person mathematics tutoring during the day for students in grades 9 through 12, one-to-one or small group in-person peer tutoring programs for students in grades 6 through 12, and then extended day tutoring, as well as virtual tutoring options. In addition, to increase our tutoring capacity at schools, we have started a program which we call Project Post Para On-Site Tutoring, which we have provided reading and math training to our paraprofessionals so they can also step in to provide tutoring.
Director Peterson, any follow-up?
Yeah, just with the RFP, when do you expect that tutoring to begin?
Administration.
Director Gandhi, Director Peterson, members of the committee, we are currently in the review process of that RFP. So we would anticipate, after going through the RFP selection, we then have to contract with the different entities. So we would anticipate beginning in the fall with the tutoring that is through the RFP. We have started already on-site school-based tutoring at some of our schools, as well as the paraprofessional tutoring.
Thank you.
Madam Secretary, can we have our next committee member?
Yes, the next board member is Director Simpson.
Thank you. Director Peterson kind of covered one of mine with restorative practices, but I also wanted to clarify the social workers, psychologists, and nurses. I know, as Director Peterson referenced, we have many kind of pots of money that we're juggling, so I just want to make sure I'm understanding. But when I looked at one of the documents, it appeared as if we were decreasing social workers by 5, psychologists by 6, and nurses by 4. I'm sure I'm incorrect, but if we could just clarify that. Maybe if we're increasing our total amounts, last year, this year, just some understanding.
Administration.
Director Gandhi, Director Simpson, members of the committee, Travis Pinter, Senior Director of Specialized Services. I can't speak to the specifics of what you're seeing there in decreases, but I can assure you there aren't any decreases in those positions. We have increased them both through the referendum in recent years and recently in ESSER, and all of those positions are we're always attempting to keep full, and they're all actually higher than they have been in recent years.
Director Simpson, any follow-up?
No, great. Thank you for that clarification. No, the only other question I had just was in terms of, lowering class sizes. I know that's something also we talked about with referendum funds. do we have a sense of like where we're at with, capacity in terms of moving into next year? Again, kind of looking at what our vacancy rate is, how we're expanding that into next year.
Administration.
Chair Gopingandi, members of the committee, Martha Kreitzman, Chief Financial Officer. I just wanted to also add to the prior answer that psychologists have increased 2.8 FTEs over fiscal year 22. Some of this could be the fact that ESSER isn't included in here, that there's differing numbers, not that one's wrong and the other's right. Social worker virtually stayed the same. It increased by 0.1. Nurses stayed the same, and restorative practices is up, as Brian mentioned. And then as far as the vacancy adjustment, is that what the question is? Could that be repeated, please?
Yes, Director, could you repeat?
Sorry. Yeah, I'm just, I'm wondering if we're, I think Director Peterson kind of touched on this, we always have a certain number of vacancies. So I was thinking of our early childhood positions and wanting to reduce class sizes, how we're expanding that into next year. Like, have we been able to fill those positions and we're expanding, adding additional positions to lower class sizes, or is that kind of staying constant, just trying to kind of wait to expand it until we're sure that we can fill those positions?
Administration.
Director Gopingandi, members of the committee, Brian Terrell is here to help us with that answer.
Director Gopingandi, members of the committee, referendum project 683, which is our class size reduction for early childhood kiddos. 28 of the 30 budgeted positions are currently filled.
Director Simpson, any follow-up on that?
No, that's okay. Thank you so much.
Madam Chair, your next speaker is Director Taylor.
Great.
Thank you, Chair Gopingandi. My two questions. The first one is around the nutrition, seeing as if we've been receiving the several emails. I know we talked about having a kitchen and a shelf come. I just like to know, like, what are we going to do in the interim time in reference of lunches for our students? And then the second was, I know in last budget, we allocated money for the trauma mental health workers and them to get training. Looking through the book, I didn't see anything about updating that or increasing that. And I guess I wanted to know, how did it fare last year with the amount of workers we had?
Thank you. Administration.
Director Gopingandi, Director Taylor, members of the committee, Travis Pinter, Senior Director of Specialized Services. I can start to address the second question. If I understood you, Director Taylor, we were talking about, I think I heard about training for our staff around trauma. Okay, I'm seeing some nodding. So a lot of that training is built into ESSER funds. I am happy to report that we've been able to contract for some of that already. And so we had very successful training for all of our psychologists and social workers, around 300 folks in total that got trained in a certified program in CBITS, cognitive behavioral intervention for trauma in schools, very sort of the industry standard for that training. So that went out since over this last 6 months or so. There were a couple different trainings. We've also built in some internal capacity trainers for that. So we were excited about that. So that's part of some of the early returns we're seeing from ESSER on those trainings. We have some other ones slated, and we're still working on that, but that's one thing I could report on.
And I think, Director Taylor, correct me if I'm wrong, I think she asked to identify where it is in the current budget. Would you be able to point her in the direction of where that might be listed? Director Taylor, is that correct?
That was also correct, and it was in alignment with the trauma mental health workers as well too, because I know we allocated monies for those last year. I just didn't see that within this budget, and I could have overlooked it.
Great. Administration.
in the meantime.
Chair Gokun, members of the committee, Martha Kreitzman, Chief Financial Officer. School Nutrition Services is working hard to serve our schools, our students, and they have worked especially hard the last couple of years during this pandemic. And there has been a number of issues because of the pandemic, and that other employers are experiencing, such as vacant positions, which have caused nutrition services to change to more of a pre-pack provision of food. And they are moving to production kitchens as quickly as they can as staff is being hired. They are also actively recruiting a chef. They are in the middle of that recruitment. And recently there was 3 more chefs added, so we're excited about that opportunity. In the ESSER funding, there is about $12 million for nutrition services. And part of that was to make or develop a central kitchen that can be used for professional development for their staff and for testing menu items, having students come and test menu items. And we have been working hard to develop those plans. It's deviated right now. We have a draft plan that we would have 1 central kitchen and also update some of our current kitchens that serve our schools with more equipment, and that they could also be used as satellite sites for training so that staff may not have to travel as far. So we're very excited about those plans, and we've been working closely with Sean Kane, whose team has done a wonderful job creating renderings for the plans. And we have
Chair Gokun and members of the board. One of the things that we have also been working on is working with our student body. Started out with the Superintendent Advisory Council, had a number of meetings with them at various school locations to kind of talk about the school lunch and what improvements that's needed. We're working along with some other school groups that we have been trying to work and set up a meeting with a number of student groups that are out there that have been working on the project and looking at what we can do to work with their recommendations that have presented to us. The YES group has presented us documentation, and we have responded back to that particular group that we're going to be working with. The LIT group we're going to be reaching out to, as well as going to be working with our school groups when we're going out to meet with them to talk to them about various ways and looking at, like Martha said, some opportunities for taste testing and things of that nature. And a big factor is to get up all of those salad bars and up and running, especially in your secondary schools, middle school, and high schools.
So I still don't think we've answered her question about the mental health and trauma specialists for this budget year. So could we address that question? Director Taylor, before any follow-up on the nutrition that you had?
Not at this time. I'll follow up offline with them about some more stuff. But I do want to hear about the mental health because they didn't answer that.
Yes.
Chair Gokun and members of the committee, we will get back to you momentarily. If we could just go on to the next question, and we will reiterate that answer for you, please.
Great. We will come back to it, Director Taylor, I promise you.
Thank you.
So we can go into a second round, right, Madam Secretary?
Madam Chair, you would put yourself in the queue at this point, and then if you don't have any questions, we can begin the second round.
And the second round.
Okay, great. Starting over, it would be Director Carr.
So I guess my only question for tonight for the administration would be if you could walk me through how the budget aligns with the recruitment and retention efforts specifically, I'd appreciate that.
Administration.
Chair Gogan-Gundy and members of the board. One of the things that we have done is we have set aside monies for recruitment and retention of staff and making sure that we have a robust plan that we have in place with a number of job fairs. We have one coming actually this Saturday. We also have we've gone out to a number of different HBCUs this year. We've been out of the country a number of different times. We want to ask Michael Harris to come to the table to kind of walk us through what those recruitment events have been like. And so that is what we're doing. We're also working with MPSU and a number of other local universities that we have partnerships with here in the city to improve our numbers and quality around our teacher pipeline as well as our para pipeline. Mr. Harris.
Chair Gogan-Gundy, members of the committee, Michael Harris, Senior Director of Talent Management. Yeah, so the Department of Talent Management has been quite busy with our recruitment efforts. As Dr. Posley stated, we will be hosting our classified recruitment fair this Saturday at South Division High School from 10 till 2, because we know those positions are very important in our schools to support our teaching staff and to keep our buildings open and moving forward. We've been busy. We are continuing to focus on working with Alverno College to move some of our employees that are interested in pursuing teaching careers. Alverno College has been quite generous with the discounted tuition. So we really want to thank them for really opening their doors and their community up to our employees. So we're excited that many of them will be starting this summer to make sure that they are obtaining credits to maintain in positions. I'm happy to say that at least 25 of our paraprofessionals went through the cycle A and or cycle B, and they are now moving into teacher roles for fall. We're not done yet. Our goal is 100%. To ensure that all of our schools and departments are staffed, because we know we need those folks in front of our students to impact the teaching and learning. So we do have many events coming up. I do have some preliminary numbers right now as we just closed cycle B. Moving forward, we have about 244 teacher vacancies. As you are aware, teachers in the district have until tomorrow to render resignations. And so we are definitely receiving those. And so these numbers are very fluid. But as we process individuals through the pre-employment process, we update these numbers daily. So we're definitely focusing on the retention part of the work. We know we need to do a better job of that. We know if we have happy employees, they do good work, they keep our kids happy and our families happy. So retention is definitely a focus for some of our schools in the 53206 areas, where we will be kicking that off this fall. But again, we are actively in the community supporting and recruiting and talking about the career opportunities in Milwaukee Public Schools.
Dr. Carr, any follow-up?
Yes, so specifically, are there any investments in preparation courses for those perhaps that are teaching with an emergency license that needs to complete that additional step with regards to the FORT or the praxis exams to secure or solidify their teaching certification? I think that could be something that could speak to the retention efforts. In addition, can you walk me through our retention efforts or budget that's in alignment with retention to address culture and climate of the district?
Administration.
Chair Gogan-Gundy, members of the committee, Michael Harris, Senior Director of Talent Management. Yeah, so MPSU, we utilize that area as a support for any of our employees who are in any type of teacher prep program. So we kicked off our tutoring for any employee in the district if they're interested on April 25th. Those individuals just need to sign up for a tutor for the area that they need support, and then we assign a tutor for them. That tutoring is available. We have 2 locations. They can go to Washington High School or South Division. We wanted 2 areas that folks could get to easily. Because the board did allow us to use some of the funds from ESSER to pay for those tutors. So we have ticked that off. We had to vet those tutors, make sure they were right for the areas that we need. We continue to recruit those tutors because as other needs arise, we want to make sure that we can support that. That tutoring will last throughout the summer, so it's not going to sunset. We want folks to have the support that they need to be successful in their programs.
And then could you address the second half of our question around retention as it relates to culture and climate? Director Kai did the follow-up for you, so let me know if you need anything else.
Chair Gokul Gandhi, Director Carr, members of the committee, Adrian Maddaleni, Chief Human Resources Officer. Yes, we definitely agree. Culture and climate is an essential part of retention and making sure that we are investing in that. As much as we hire people, we need them to stay. And so we have set funds aside and we're working closely to expand our onboarding program and working with the principals, building leaders, as well as the new hires coming in, having technology come in, work and have surveys where new hires come in, they can complete a survey response 30, 60, 90 days. How are things going? How things are moving along? So we're continuing with those efforts, definitely looking at engaging, do engagement surveys to really ensure that we are meeting the needs of our staff at the district level as well at the school level.
Director Carr, any follow-up?
And members of the board, one of the things that we started is this whole thing around making sure that we have a successful orientation for individuals when they walk through the doors. That orientation has gone from in years past 1 day to a total of 5 days now, where we go each day and work with our staff to make sure that they're getting everything they need. A lot of that has to do with the curriculum, making sure that we are not placing individuals in schools without going through and letting them know exactly what's going to be taught and the materials that's needed and the PD and preparation that's needed around that. Also to make sure that we're looking at this whole thing around buddy teachers, having our principals to work with our new staff as well as preparing them and linking them up with a veteran staff member that will work with them throughout, and also having opportunities for principals to have time to share and stop in and talk with those new staff members to make sure that we can make sure that they're staying with us. These are some of the things that we're doing around retention, and these are some of the proven strategies that we know work. Also making sure that we have a toolkit of looking at this whole thing around discipline, what needs that toolbox on alternatives to suspensions and things of that nature to make sure that they have the proper tools to be successful.
Director Carr, any follow-up?
No, thank you for that. And I'll just say I will, for the listening audience, we'll be hosting town hall meetings so we can dissect the budget and take more community input.
Okay, the next board member is Director Garcia.
Before we go to Director Garcia, I just wanted the administration to circle back and see if they had an answer for Director Taylor's question.
Director Gokul Gandhi, Director Taylor, members of the committee, Travis Pinter, Senior Director of Specialized Services. Yes, thank you for that. The trauma-informed coaches, you'll find the various coaches listed in Title I under Project 111.
Thank you. Madam Secretary.
Okay, Director Garcia.
Yeah, so my question is more for, I guess, like personal clarification, just to better understand our process. So I know that we have a certain amount allocated to staff hiring. Based on just trends of, the issues related to retention, to being able to fill those positions. I guess just what percentage estimate are we thinking that we're going to be able to secure? And I guess my question is, with that amount that might not be able to be filled, like, does that then usually carry over into another budget year? At what point are we able then to maybe reallocate that to maybe other priority areas? Yeah, so just guidance on that for my processing.
Administration.
Chair Gokongandi, members of the committee, Martha Kreutzmann, Chief Financial Officer. The second part of your question, if it's about positions that aren't filled and what happens with funding from those positions, as part of the budget, we do have a vacancy adjustment that we predict, so that we don't have money unused in the fiscal year 23 budget. It's already accounted for in that estimate. So it wouldn't be it. We do in October update the board as to end of year actions that were taken if there is money left from the budget. If funding is maintained, it goes toward our fund balance. It's difficult to maintain funding because of our funding formula, which expects us to spend the money that we receive in that year. But it is also important to have fund balance. So that could be done. We've also used it to pay OPEB or to put money into the construction fund in the past.
Chair Gokongandi and members of the board, our ultimate goal is to fill every single position that we have that's listed. That's our goal. And we're going to do everything that we possibly can to address that. So just want to make that clear as well.
Director Garcia, any follow-up?
No, thank you. And I know that that's absolutely our intentions here, because I know that, that's tied to many other of the issues that we see, teacher burnout, the, the lower class size ratio of instruction of, students to teachers. So I think that's definitely something that, we kind of just need to keep our active eye on that pulse of that situation. So thank you for that information.
Okay, the next speaker is Director Herndon.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to go back to the nutrition issue, which is something that I brought up over the last couple of weeks. I hope you can hear me. Specifically, administration keeps speaking of production kitchens, and I'd like clarification for that for the public, because as we talk to the youth, and some of us have had lunch at the schools more recently, and to my surprise, what I continue to find is that we lack the facilities, which is what the students are asking for. They're asking for their lunches to be prepared in their buildings rather than central kitchens, which is the term that we typically use. What I'm hearing tonight is production kitchens, and I'd like you to clarify for the public so that they don't, especially the young people, don't misunderstand what is meant by a production kitchen. I don't think you mean, like in the case of Madison High School, what I found was that although they have a kitchen and the kitchen has not been removed, they are not using it. And what I was told in the last several weeks was that it was due to lack of employees. So I'd like more expansion on that, please. As we look at the budget, is there something we can do to get more people hired so that in such situations, we can make an effort as we work on this budget to put the staffing in the buildings that do have the equipment there.
Administration.
Chair Gokul Gandhi, members of the board, Umar Abdullah, Director of School Nutrition Services. First of all, I'd like to mention that when we started the school year, we had all but about 10 or 12 schools that were receiving pre-packed meals from our central kitchens. And that is primarily because of the staffing shortages. And throughout the year, we have worked despite the continuing shortage of staffing. We were able to move about 12 schools back to production kitchens, meaning that they are preparing their own food in their school kitchens. So we are working really hard every single day, trying to identify which schools we can gradually move back to a production kitchen. As we speak, we are working on moving back View and Gainesland schools back to being either a production kitchen where they are preparing their own food, or another option we have, we call them bulk receiving. So the food is prepared at a central location in bulk containers and shipped out to the school. So they are not pre-packed individual packs. So we're doing everything we can on a daily basis to keep evaluating our situation and move the schools back to production kitchen. In order to do that, the rest of this school year, as well as next school year, our number one focus is going to be hiring people as well as training them. That is what our goal is, and we believe that as much as students and families and the board members would want to see that, we also want to get back to our production kitchens. And the only thing that's stopping us from moving in that direction faster is our staffing levels. Every single day, we hire 2 people, 3 people. We are looking at which school we can move back to production. Thank you.
Director Herndon, and I'm so sorry, Dr. Posley, did you have any comments?
No, I think, go ahead.
Chair Gokul Gandhi and members of the board, I just want to make sure that I mention that production kitchens are where our kitchen staff prepare the food right there. It's not the pre-packed food that they receive from the central kitchens. So that's what production kitchens mean.
Thank you. Director Herndon, any follow-up on that response?
Yes, thanks for clarification of that particular issue, so we're all on the same page. But at the same time, does that mean that we can get a list of the schools who are scheduled to go to production kitchens this fall, especially the high schools?
Chair Gokul Gandhi, members of the board, Umar Abdullah, Director of School Nutrition Services. Yes, definitely we can prepare a list of schools that we would like to move back to a production kitchen in fall during the next school year.
Great. Director Herndon, any follow-up?
Only to say that thanks administration for that information, but I look forward to getting the data on what would be needed out of this budget in order to make sure that that happens. Thank you.
Thank you. Madam Secretary.
The next speaker that we have in alphabetical order would be Director Leonard.
Oh, wow. I have like 100 questions. I won't ask them all. Sorry. we all want to go home eventually. First of all, I want to thank Mr. Abdullah. Actually, I know that I know you're sincere and you're trying to make this all work. I guess I have a couple of questions. You had gone over a plan with myself and quite a few others regarding how you may not have to, there might be a way that you would not have to replace all 238 vacancies. I did not write it down. If you remember exactly how you said that you could do this to make it actually more efficient and better for those people that would be hired because they'd be working more hours, but I cannot speak to that. And I hate to put you on the spot on this because I myself wish I had my notes on this, but I don't. Can you explain, at least in a short version, what that plan was?
Administration.
Chair Gokul Gandhi and members of the board, Umar Abdullah, Director of School Nutrition Services. Yes, Director Leonard, when we had the conversation, we did mention that in case of a continued shortage of staffing, we may have to look at or explore options with technology. One of our managers is familiar with some technology, some equipment that can transport food that is prepared and ready to serve in portable equipment in the trucks that can be transported from one school to another and serve the food right there. So bring the food in time for lunch period and serve at that school and then go on to the next school. So we have to kind of work with the schools and work with their lunch periods so that we have enough time to stop at one location, serve the lunch and pack up and then go to the next location. There is also a possible option in terms of technology that we want to explore that we have not seen anywhere at the schools, but we heard that UW-Madison was using some sort of like robots to deliver meals to student dorm rooms. So we thought that is something that we can explore and see, if we have to, we have many of our schools who eat breakfast in the classroom. So we can look at that option and see if a robot can deliver food to the classrooms like that. So those are some of the things that we are thinking, and we are thinking about exploring to see if something can be beneficial for our purposes.
Director Leonard, any follow-up?
Just so that food would be still delivered fresh and it would not be pre-packed. Is that correct?
Yes, Chair Gokul Gandhi and members of the board, that is correct, Director Leonard. That would be prepared on the same day and transported in those equipment.
Okay,
just a follow from Director Leonard's question. I think at some point we did, Director Leonard, you were alluding to talking about making the kitchen positions full so that it's a full work week so that they would be able to obtain benefits to be able to stay. And I think that's an issue we've been having with recruitment, right? Is that oftentimes we don't, positions are not benefits eligible. So I know what you're talking about. And I was wondering if you, just extending your follow-up, is that something that you were alluding to, Director Leonard?
That's sort of the next thing, and I don't want to use up a whole bunch of my time, or however you want to say it. So when I have talked to quite a few food service people, that has been an issue that they have brought up for a long time, to be honest. So many of them feel like that's not worth the effort to do this job if they're only going to be putting in 3 or 4 hours a day at the most, 5 days a week. So I really think this is more of a comment And if you have any ideas in mind, Mr. Abdullah, on how we can circumvent this and change this condition, we really need to consider full-time work or close to full-time work for our people. So if you have anything you can offer, I'd be glad to hear it.
Administration.
Chair Gokangandi, Director Leonard, members of the committee, Martha Kreitzman, Chief Financial Officer. A couple years ago, we added about, I don't know, I think it was about 95 benefit eligible positions to food service for food service assistants, thinking that would help us with attracting staff. But some staff didn't want that, and other staff still wanted to stay at the hours that they had. And Omer has some more information about that.
Chair Gokul Gandhi and members of the board, Umar Abdullah, Director of School Nutrition Services. That is correct, Director Leonard, that we have currently over 200 staff vacancies in nutrition services, and many of those positions are benefit eligible. So we don't believe that we are short of staffing due to lack of benefit eligible positions. The only thing we can think of is, we do have issue with the staff attendance as well as retention. So if there is anything, I would recommend, or I would request that if there is something as incentive can be offered to the staff for attendance as well as staying with us throughout the year, that is something we feel that could benefit, improve the staffing levels.
Thank you. Any follow-up, Director Leonard? Well,
just a suggestion, and maybe you've already done this, but I guess we should find out why they're not staying. We should be very explicit about that. Every time I talk about exit interviews, I think it's important because we have to know why they're not coming in. That's probably not just for your department, Mr. Abdullah, but any others, but since we're talking about yours. So you don't need to respond to that. That's just my suggestion, that we become much more scientific in this approach so we can do a better job of figuring out how we can retain and attract people. Thank you.
Okay, the next speaker then would be Director Peterson.
Thank you. Just on the question of cafeteria workers, this past week, I had the privilege of being with some YES students and teachers concerned about this issue. And Professor Jennifer Gaddis from Madison, UW-Madison, who is an expert on and been studying school lunches for the last 10 years, said two things that I think are worth noting, is that what we are facing in Milwaukee is being faced by many of the large school districts throughout the country. We're not unique, unfortunately. And she said the other thing is, as kitchens start making things from scratch again or becoming productive kitchens, it offers the possibility of people doing that more hours, because obviously you're working that. That's just a side note. I would change the subject a little, and we've talked about recruitment of staff. I'd like to turn to the recruitment of of students. But just to say before I ask the question or pose the question is that I just encourage all staff members, all parents, all board members to also see ourselves as part of the team that needs to recruit people to work in this district at different levels, at different occupations, and also, of course, recruit parents and families to send their students to MPS. In the last couple days, I've seen last night, the music festival, today, the STEM fair. I mean, there's such great things going on in MPS that people don't know about. I think if we all work together, we can at least lessen the reduction of student that don't show up. Okay. So my question though is if we could, if the administration could talk a little bit about what in the budget is focused on communications and recruitment of students, and how they foresee us accelerating those efforts.
Administration.
Andy and members of the board. One of the things that we have been doing is this whole thing around recruitment fairs for our students. There's dollars that are set aside so that we can have all the various enrollment fairs, such as the enrollment fair that we have for our kindergarten students that we just have kicked off. We have an enrollment fair that has been set aside that we have done for our students in transitioning from middle school to high school and seeing what we can do there. There's enrollment fairs set up for those kinds of things. And then early admissions, we have enrollment piece that is earmarked for that. The other piece that we're doing around this whole thing around enrollment is that we have a number of individuals that work with us every summer. We're knocking on doors, door to door, all of the festivals and things that are happening around the city. Recruitment efforts are going on there. We're doing recruitment efforts at public places throughout, and the enrollment process continues as we move forward. So I'm going to turn you over to Mr. Matthew Boswell to add anything that I may have missed.
Yeah, Chair Gogagundy, members of the committee, Matthew Boswell, Senior Director of the Department of Student Services. Yes, Dr. Posley was right in alignment in terms of all of our recruitment efforts in terms of enrolling students. As you well know, we had a virtual enrollment fair as well as an in-person enrollment fair just to provide some variety to our parents. Next year, we will be continuing our MVP program that gives parents that are not ready to return to in-person an opportunity to continue their educational services online. Additionally, as Dr. Posley mentioned, our recruiting efforts have always been a very large catch for us. We'll be sending anywhere from 25 to 30 individuals into the communities that will be canvassing identify areas to recruit students and get new students to the Milwaukee Public Schools, as well as we are in planning stages with the Department of Communications in terms of some other things that we'll be doing this summer in terms of yard signs, advertising, radio, TV, so on and so forth. So the alignment of making sure that NPS name, brand, and services are heard throughout the city is well planned out and will be executed.
Chair Gogagundy and members of the board, the question was asked, where are the dollars set aside? Those dollars are set aside in student services in those accounts, as well as the advertisement piece is set in the communication account. And we're going to be doing communications around that. I know a number of you seen those wonderful Sherman 3-year-olds that was spinning around in chairs and asking individuals to come to our district. That's all a part of our marketing campaign and advertisement. So those dollars are set into those two accounts.
Director Peterson.
Hurry.
I'm sorry, Chair Gogagundy, Lynn Rule, Director of Financial Planning and Budget. There is one other pool of funds. We have an enrollment and student events account within the school accounts. That was just started last year, and we're going through watching, or I should say the current year. So we're seeing how that is spent and all that. Right now it's at $100,000, but we realize that that may change as we go forward.
Any follow-up, Director Peterson?
Yeah, the last comment, if you could explain what the school event looks like in terms of recruitment and how schools might access money for that, if that's what it means.
Administration.
Those are the funds for I'm sorry. Chair Gogagundy, Director Peterson, members of the committee. The money, that is some of the money that's put aside just for these large events that we were just talking about.
Okay.
It used to all just come from student services. We're trying to separate it so that we can track how we're spending it and see if more money is needed for this.
Chair Gogan-Gundy and members of the board, all of the activities that we partake in is marketing, advertisement, all those kinds of things. We have the language summit this weekend. President Peterson just talked about the STEM fair we had today. We had the biannual music festival. All of these are opportunities to get the name out there, to let people know that we're open. Anything that we do, we're advertising. Even when it comes to the MAPC Gala for tomorrow night and City Year event that we're being a part of, we are also there, usually in the publication act, letting it be known that we have openings within the district and please apply.
Director Peterson, any follow-up?
No, thank you very much.
Great.
Okay, Director Taylor would be the next. I'm sorry, Director Simpson would be the next speaker.
Thank you. Yeah, so I just a thank you to Mr. Abdul. I know many of us have contacted him and had some conversations. So I just want to thank him for his time, that he's taking to meet with us and talk to us about nutrition. And I more of a request than a question that I have. So, mental health supports have come up time and time again. And of course, these last 2 years, it's become a very critical issue. And I'm just wondering if there could be some type of chart created where we could see like how many PBS coaches, how many trauma sensitive coaches we have, culturally responsive, if there's, psychologists, social workers, if there could just be a chart of people that we would, positions we would identify as mental health supports for our students, kind of like last year, what was in our budget, and then maybe the proposed amount, just, in terms of looking at trying to sift through the many different funds that we have available to us and kind of put that all together in one document would just be helpful, if that's possible. I hate to put any more work on anybody.
Administration.
Director Gogan-Gundy, Director Simpson, Travis Pinter, Senior Director of Specialized Services. We have that in a couple different formats, but just to get it specifically for your request around the mental health and PBS supports and that type of thing, it can be easily done, but we'll just need to put it together for you.
Okay, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Any follow-up, Director Simpson?
Okay, the next speaker then would be Director Peterson.
Nope.
Second, I'm sorry, I'm going the wrong way. Director Taylor.
Yes, you are. Thank you. My question is more, there were some changes with transportation, and just for the listening audience as well as our families, can we talk about what some of those changes in transportation are within this budget?
Administration.
Chair Gogan-Gundy and members of the board, the transportation piece, each time that we have come before you our last meeting with the dollars that was allotted to the district by the governor, we set aside additional dollars there, roughly, I want to say around $2 million that was set aside there to offset funding. So that is some of the things that you will see that is not here. So that is that piece. And then I'm going to ask the budget team to kind of touch base on that whole transportation page. Go ahead, Lynn.
Director Gogan-Gundy, members of the committee, right now, we did not change the base budget for transportation. We did not cut it, we did not increase it. However, as Dr. Posey said, we do have money set aside elsewhere, I believe in ESSER funds, to cover the additional costs that we will more than likely have because of that, because of the pandemic and all those sorts of things changing.
Chair Gogan-Gundy, members of the committee, Martha Kreitzman, Chief Financial Officer, the plan in the COVID relief fund from the governor is to add an operational increase to the bus company's contract so that daily they have an increase to help them with the price of gas and other obstacles they're facing right now, maybe recruitment of staff, so that we make sure that we can serve our students every day to the best of our ability.
Director Taylor. Oh, just kidding.
Thank you. I just wanted to make sure that we talked about that extra funding that was had and maybe how some of the pricing may change coming up this new year within transportation and busing. I thought it was vital that the community know as well too and understanding the budget.
We have one more update, I think, from the administration regarding transportation.
Okay. Gandhi, members of the committee. Before I let David talk, I want to mention that increase was a modification to the current year's contract, but we also will be bringing next year's contracts to the board, and we hope to add that same modification for next year to help the bus companies and increase the number of buses that are serving our students.
Chair Gokul Gandhi, members of the committee, David Solik-Pfeiffer, Director of Business and Transportation Services. I just want to make sure I cover the basis of this. I was running into the room when I heard transportation. Can you just repeat the question and then I'm going to elaborate the best I can?
Director Taylor, would you like to repeat the question?
Just basically giving more of a brief summary of the changes within transportation for our family and within this budget.
Administration.
Chair Gokul Gandhi, members of the committee, David Solik-Pfeiffer, Director of Business Transportation Services. As Ms. Kreitzman had mentioned, we've been discussing mechanisms to stimulate the market a little bit. And as she had mentioned very, very well, we have moved towards providing extra funds to help support the attraction and retention of drivers in the marketplace, particularly given the rate of inflation and the rate of gas and things of that nature. I'm happy to also kind of report that we have introduced in the next RFP for wheelchair services and specialty programs. We have a new company coming in that's going to provide 75 buses for the district. So that should be helpful for us to stimulate the marketplace a little bit and provide additional resources for families to get new drivers into the arena.
Director Taylor, any follow-up?
No, thank you. Was this just one question, Chair Gokul Gandhi?
You can ask another one.
While the little people are in back of me, I think this one would align. Was there an increase? I did see something for early childhood education, but in reference of that, of the amount of classes increased per school or throughout the district, are we increasing that class size?
Administration.
I'm sorry, Chair Gokul Gandhi, Director Taylor, could you repeat the question? It kind of went in and out and I was having trouble catching it.
Yeah. Are there any increases for early childhood classrooms? Are we adding classrooms throughout the district or increasing how many classrooms we have per school in reference of early childhood?
Administration.
Director Gokul Gandhi, members of the committee, at this time, no, we are not. One of the major reasons for that is our early childhood enrollment is still quite low. That started with the pandemic and it's kind of continued. So for now, until we can start to get more students.
Chair Gokul Gandhi and members of the board, also with that being said, we are providing safety nets and support around our early childhood programs. Last with the $9.6 million that we brought to the board a few weeks ago, there was a number of teachers that was set aside in that to help support those classrooms. So to build that safety net for students and student learning. So we are looking at it from that perspective.
Director Taylor, any follow-up?
No, thank you.
Great.
All right, Director Gokul Gandhi, it is your turn, Madam Chair.
Great. Dr. Posley, I have a thematic question for you. So we know that we're in a funding environment where we aren't getting the per pupil increases that our students deserve. And we heard a little bit of testimony saying that budgets are moral documents, which I agree with. And so I would love to hear from you, how do you balance a funding environment where we're not getting money to do what we need to do, with making sure that the district is heading in a direction where we're really paying attention to racial justice, to culturally responsive training, and to making sure that all of our kids are really getting the highest quality education. And I would love to just hear you talk a little bit about the process of the budget and what your big guiding North Stars were as you were putting the budget together. And if, I guess just maybe one part of the budget that you're really excited about.
There's a number of parts of the budget that I'm just overly excited about, and we kind of talked to them earlier. The number one factor that we have to look at, and something that is focused at enrollment, because we know that enrollment drives the numbers in this district. And if we don't get enrollment, we don't get the dollars that we need. So everything starts off with enrollment. But with that, looking at what can we do with the 158 schools that we have in the district to make sure that we have an equitable education, a quality education for every single child within the district. And that is what we have focused on with the ambitious instruction, accelerated learning, because we know that if we can get young people off to a great start in those early years and making sure that they have mastered the area of math, reading, and writing at high levels. So that's that whole piece around ambitious instruction and making sure that we have the text material to be able to do that. So in this budget, we're excited about the adoptions that we have, our literacy adoption and math around what we need to do to make sure that we can build safety nets around young people. And then this whole thing around equity, making sure everyone in this district has access to everything that is offered. So we have a number of offices that our gender identity office that has been that we just inherited last year. And it is moving in the right direction, along with the Black and Latino male office, along with all of the equity work that we are doing that's around that with the restorative practice lens. We're excited about all of that work coming together and working with the various offices, as well as our psychologists and social workers and school counselors that are doing the work on a daily basis, how we bridge that together with the trauma-informed care piece that is a part of this budget, and then also the mobile teams that we have in 53206 and how we are going about to make that happen so that we can provide the support that is needed. We also know that we have to have quality staff, and we have done a number of different things, and this budget overflows with things that we're doing around teacher quality, teacher pipeline, and what we need to do. I'm excited about the work that we have done with the Black colleges on the Black colleges tours, going in and out of the country, going to Spain, going to Mexico. And we have a trip coming up now to Africa. So we are doing a number of different things around that particular piece that we're all excited about, and knowing that we will move everything forward, but also looking at that 4.7% increase that we have provided for our staff. Our staff has given it 110% this year. And we want to make sure that we can compensate our staff, because one of the quality things of keeping good quality staff is making sure that we are paying our staff and making sure that that is happening. And so that is something that is a step in the right direction that this budget represents. So the other side of this whole piece is the idea of when we look at the central office here around making sure we got wholesome professional development and having staff. We went where I talked to you earlier about not in various areas like science. You have one science person in science. Now we're looking at having a person that is elementary content, as well as middle school, as well as high school, doing that in all of the content areas so that we can build those safety nets around our staff so that our staff can be successful and as we move forward. So those are just but a few of the wonderful things that are happening with this budget that we are excited about, that we know that will drive academic achievement and student engagement. And so making sure that we can get our early learners early and often, and making sure we start early as possible, making sure students are in school on a daily basis. The other piece is this whole thing around attendance. And what can we do around attendance, building in those safety nets to make sure that our children are in school on a daily basis, making sure that learning is fun and the environment is safe and healthy for all for the learning process. But also, it wouldn't go without being said that the pandemic is not over. So we're still working through that maze and trying to make sure that we are providing the PPE and doing all of those safety measures that we have to go forward so that our students can be in school on a daily basis. And the bigger piece is looking at how do we embrace the community and making sure that we're bringing the community in to play. We talked a little bit about our buildings. Our buildings is the average age of our buildings 80 years old. And so we have a lot of work that needs to be done with our buildings, and we're doing that on an ongoing basis, talking about our cafeterias. We want to make sure that we can make sure our kitchens are equipped and those kinds of things, because we have gone away from the scratch kitchen to the pre-pack type of meals. And now to shift back, it's going to take time and energy and support to make those kinds of things happen. But also adding a robust communication plan that is seamless through all of this work that we have done. And we are seeing that as a part of this budget as well. I will take a brief.
And my other question to you is a big part of, I think, what we could do better is user experience, right? Whether that's parents or students. And so this, you can respond to this. This is more of a comment. What I'm hoping to see, especially in communications, is someone dedicated to really thinking through our user design, whether it's the website, enrollment forms, MPS rec, responding to parents. Just, I think that this is definitely an area for improvement. And I don't think this is a surprise to anybody. And so I hope that as we continue, we do think about hiring someone or really focusing on user experience as a main part of our process improvement.
Chair Gogungandi and members of the board, every single day, we're looking at how we can improve. We want to make sure that Milwaukee Public Schools is everyone's number one choice. And in order to do that, we have to make sure that we provide five-star services, a five-star service on a daily basis. How do you get to that five-star service? That's also customer satisfaction is what drives that five-star service. Also academic achievement. We've got to make sure that we have academic achievement in place, as well as course offerings. One of the things that I omitted and didn't talk about, well, I talked about it earlier, we are offering basically 17 college classes, up to 17 different courses that are being offered, and then having courses that are being offered this summer. So we want to make sure that we are appealing and also knowing that this is a one-stop shop, that you can come here from K3 all the way to 12th grade and then walk out of here with an IB diploma, AP diploma, or additional credits from MATC or UWM for early college. So that is an offer that we have that you can make that happen while you're here within the district. But making sure that our customers are satisfied. How do we interact with the DAC and various groups, parent groups, on what we need to do in order to improve what we do on a daily basis? Looking at exit data and exit surveys from human resources, finding out why people are leaving. And when we drill down and look at some of our classified positions, we know that the number one factor is cost. And one of the things that we have driving home in this budget is looking at how do we do a job study to look at what we have, the compression issues that we have within the district, and where you got other companies that are paying higher rates. How do we adjust to that, and what can we do to adjust to that? The other side of it is telling our story on a daily basis. I shared with principals on Wednesday. We have to do a better job of telling our stories. We all have some amazing stories, but how do we tell those stories? How do we get those stories out there? and making sure that that is happening, but also getting every opportunity to make things happen. And we talk about the various number of events that are taking place throughout, making sure that our children are exposed and making sure that they get all of the opportunities that is offered in this in education. So making sure those kinds of things are happening, and then building partnerships with our community. Because when, I might say over and over that Milwaukee Public Schools is the greatest place to educate your child, but when we have others saying the same thing and great business partners are able to do that work and that heavy lifting for us, how do we bridge the gap together to work with business partners to make sure that we are able to offer a quality education and also they will also help us along the way with the funding sources that's needed. But with those kinds of things in mind, just knowing that we got to constantly, we have also secret shoppers that, I have secret shoppers that go into schools to register children, that give us feedback, secret shoppers to seek and they walk into one of the doors and see what can happen. So we got all of these kinds of things that are taking place on a daily basis, and we have to continue our five-star service piece as we move forward.
Madam Secretary, can we open it up for another round of questions?
Okay, great. Director Carr.
No questions.
Thank you. Director Garcia.
No questions.
Great. Director Herndon.
No questions.
Thank you. Director Leonard.
Always questions. Sorry. Just something is, I think we've sort of alluded to this at times. Have we ever tried to develop teacher recruitment programs from our own high school students? Developing something that would work with UWM or MATC or whatever to actually give us sort of a heads up. Because I say this because yesterday when we were at the music festival, and I found out how many music teachers we have hired that were direct descendants of MPS, and the excellent programs we have, I don't think we're tapping all of our best sources. So I'm just curious about that.
Administration.
Chair Gokul Gandhi, Director Leonard, members of the committee, John Hill, Director of College of Career Readiness. We are currently working on building pathways for high school students to explore and enter the field of education. So at Reagan High School, there is a career program pathway for education. Those students have been taking the UWM curriculum and instruction 300 class this year. And we have South Division, which is building a NAF Academy pathway for education, as well as our MQ College Connections program pathway, which we have some students at UWM taking Children's Literature 233. We are in the process with the MQ College Connections program of redesigning that pathway. We have operated the College Connections under a continuous improvement model. So we kind of monitor how students are doing, and then we adjust the course sequencing appropriately to ensure greater participation and success. So we will be making an adjustment this fall where we'll start with internships first for our students to generate excitement around teaching. So our juniors in spring will be able to go to the elementary school nearby, and we will try to pair them with one of our rock star teachers so they can really become excited and see the fun aspects of education. And then senior year, they will be on the MATC and UWM campuses taking coursework related to education. So we're just in our third year of the College Connections pathway. South is just in their first year, and Reagan is in their first year. So we're starting slow, but if we do it right, we will see some real positive outcomes.
Excellent. Excellent. Very good to hear. Thank you.
Thanks.
The next board director is Director Peterson.
I don't have a question, but I do have a comment. Last thing I'll say this evening. And I wish to comment on what Martha Kreitzman said about the context of this budget at the beginning of the conversation. This past year, our educators, our support staff, and students have done amazing work, despite the fact that the state legislature refused to provide any consumer price index increase in per pupil funding for this school year or next year. And this is affecting schools and districts, not just in Milwaukee, but across the state, and it's unconscionable. How can educators across the state best serve our students when instead of providing a CPI increase of $372 per student, the legislature provided $0? And not to be forgotten, they are sitting on a $5.2 billion rainy day fund. My message to the legislature is it's not just raining, it's pouring. And our students throughout Wisconsin are suffering because your refusal to do the right thing. And it's my hope that we can continue to pressure the legislature to do that right thing because our students deserve the best. Thanks.
Thank you. The next speaker would be Director Simpson.
What he said. I can't really follow up with that. Yeah, just yes, 100%. Director Peterson, thank you for putting that out there. No questions from myself. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Taylor.
Thank you. I was in the rest of my question, but one I know we've talked about it before, is the fact about like the ESSER funds and people like understanding that within the budget. I know it can be confusing. Will we be putting some type of tab like on the district page so people can have an understanding better of the ESSER funds outside of the budget? Of what we utilize those funds for?
Administration.
Chair Gulkangandi, members of the committee, Director Taylor, there is an attachment to this item. It's attachment number 6. That is a supplement. It's called the ESSER 2 and 3 proposed budget revision detail. And it provides the original budget that was approved for each of the funds. And the spring adjusted budget, that would be what we're proposing now for the spring budget. Expenditures and encumbrances that we've had so far, and the remaining balance, and how much has been used for, and highlights to show where mitigating learning loss is. So
Sure.
that supplement is attached, and it's also on our website.
Chair Gulkangandi and members of the board, if we could, if you like, we could pull that document out and have that document placed on the homepage, so Verisel could make it easier for individuals to go to and take a closer look at.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you. That's what I was aiming for. Thank you for that. That would be great.
And I think to take Director Taylor's comment a little further, and I said this during last budget cycle, again, I think this is where a UX person would be really handy, because it's one thing to look at a chart and to sit there and to read it and understand it. It's another thing to have an interactive tool, or, again, like the county does. I don't, until I tried to do that county balancing budget, I didn't realize how much trouble we were in, because the state legislature is negligent. So, trying to have balancing a budget balancing tool where people, the public can try and do it themselves, and we can have a way for them to submit their own budgets and see kind of what people are thinking would be really great. So just another plug for hiring someone who is an expert in user design. Sorry, I decided to have that comment. So Dr. Mann, you can move on to the next person.
Actually, Director Gokul Gandhi, that completes the third go round.
Amazing. Let's just open it up, see who has questions on the committee.
I see no hands.
Okay. Madam Secretary, next item, please.
Madam Chair, that was the last item on tonight's agenda.
Great. So I would like to remind the listening audience that the board has tentatively scheduled 2 more meetings on May 19th and 24th to consider the FY23 proposed budget. In addition, the board will hold its statutory but public hearing on May 17th. More information may be found on the MPS website on the board's meeting and agendas page. As always, written testimony may be sent to the Office of Board Governments by mail to 5225 West Vliet Street, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, 53221, by email to governance@milwaukee.k12.wi.us, and by fax to 414-475-8071. I do just want to put a plug in there, a happy APITA month to all of our students, staff, and community members that are celebrating. And there being no further business before the committee, this meeting is adjourned.
Good night.
Good night, y'all.
Night. Have a good evening.